Joining us tonight, Chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp. Matt, great to have you on the show. And author, columnist, Fox News contributor, Jedediah Bila, or as I call her, the conscience of the five. And
Thank you.
Provide great illumination.
That's why you're my favorite, Lou.
Yeah, bless your heart. Let's start with Paul Ryan. Jedediah, he says no, and when we know one thing, when this man says no,
he means it.
No.
Yeah, no, look, I don't think he wants the job, actually. And I don't think anyone is clamoring for him to have the job. People forget. People forget, though. No, there are people that want to beg Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney to run, no matter how many times. They could say no 500 times, and there will be that person that says, but on 501, he might agree. Yeah. People forget, though, that Paul Ryan was already on a presidential ticket and was extremely disappointing. He didn't go after President Obama toughly. He suddenly went from this guy who was out there all of a sudden, heavy talk, to being really an intellectual weakling when he ran on that ticket, in my opinion. So I think people need to, you know what, get your DVRs and roll some of that tape back to when you were criticizing him for not being tough enough, because that's who he is when he campaigns. Don't get too excited.
Or are you relieved or heartbroken, Matt, that, that Ryan has withdrawn his name?
I think it was a smart thing for him to withdraw his name, and I think it would be an absurdity for my party, the Republican Party, to look beyond Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. It's got to be one of those two to get the nomination. I think Paul Ryan did say one thing. He said it would be absurd to not have somebody who's been a candidate for president, who's not asking to get the nomination, actually get the nomination. Lou, I don't know if you noticed, but he seemed to open the door to one of the 17.
Exactly.
Yes, which I thought was very curious.
And everyone here on Lou Dobbs tonight got excited because that meant that Jim Gilmore was back in the race.
Yes.
That's right.
And we've been waiting for.
We owe it to...
And don't forget Jeb Bush.
Well, who could and who would? These billionaire donors and the ones who aren't quite billionaires, spending lots of money, going after Trump. Why can't they see that it's Cruz or it's Trump and there's not anything in between? It's
desperation. There are people that cannot stand Donald Trump to such an extent that they think somehow that the more money they spend, they'll be able to get people away from him. The truth is, this isn't an election, I've said this from the beginning, where money or negative ads or any of that is going to dictate who wins. It's about who goes and speaks to the people and they feel understands their plight, has a plan, and is tough. The one thing that's been missing from the last two presidential candidates is toughness, is someone who's not only going to debate the Democratic candidate toughly, but also is going to have policies when it comes to some of the people around the world that are pretty tough to deal with and aren't going to take any garbage. That's why Trump is up there, and that's why, frankly, Ted Cruz is winning as well, because they view him as someone who digs his heels in.
Matt, your thoughts on Trump in particular? He is saying that the party has rigged the game. He's saying to the anti-establishment crowds that he attracts by the tens of thousands, he would say the millions, and he would be right in cumulative, they're just simply not going to have it with an establishment that insists on disenfranchising 1 million voters at a time, as the Colorado party did. What do you think?
Look, I think there are plenty of ways in which you should criticize this presidential nominating process. It's arcane. These states pass some, at sometimes, ridiculous rules. But by the same token, I think Donald Trump has done a pretty good job of navigating these rules and winning a lot of primaries and winning a lot of caucuses. And what his campaign needs to do right now, I know there's this rhetorical strategy of pushing back on the RNC, but they just simply, they have to lock it down in New York, and these polls are strong. They have to lock it down in these other northeastern states, and they got to take it to California.
Let me ask you about Cleveland, though, first, real quick. I'd like both of you to get that. 40B, requiring 8 victories. It would make it between Cruz and Trump. Period, no questions asked. You think it would be a smart idea for them to preserve? Because it looks to me like it'd be idiotic for them to change rules. What do you think, Matt?
In this scenario, I don't like that rule because it was a Romney rule, but in this scenario, I think they ought to keep it because it should be either Trump or Cruz. But let me tell you, they can change those rules at any point, Lou.
Oh, I know
we got to keep our eye on the ball.
And if they do, I think they'll pay a hell of a price.
Yeah, it should be Trump or Cruz. These are the guys that have fought the hard fight. They're at the top for a reason. And anyone else who isn't at the top, they didn't make it for a reason. Bring them back into the circle. They're going to make the same mistakes and leave people unhappy.
See, we took care of that. Reince Priebus.
Solving the world's problem.
There you got it. The chairman of the Republican National Committee. Matt Schlapp, thanks so much for being with us. Jedediah Bila,
thanks, Lou.
Thank you.